Welcome to episode 119 of the Highly Relevant Podcast. My name is Jack Rico, and today I will be talking about Men in Black International with none other than film and culture critic Mike Sargent. Now, what you're about to hear for the next 25 minutes, this conversation that I have with Mike, essentially is a deconstruction of the film, but it's also much more than that. You know, one of the things that I like about Mike and I is, look, Mike has made films, documentaries. He's produced, directed, written. He's one of these incredibly versatile people. And conversations with him are always so enjoyable because you're either learning something or you're understanding a subject better. I think a lot of people seem to like him and us having conversations. And even though this is Men in Black International, it's really about culture and how that culture reflects upon us, our tastes, you know, what we like and dislike. So for the next 25 minutes, enjoy this conversation for Men in Black International. And it's time for the one and only Mr. Mike Sargent. Mike, how do you like that intro?
I like that. It's almost as good as my intro for you.
See, you got the Jack Rico thing on lockdown, but yes. I don't have the Mike Sargent thing on lockdown. I think it's time for me to...
Well, here's what you need. All you just need is some applause sound effects.
I'm going to add it. So it's definitely happening. It's definitely happening. Hey, man, thank you so much for coming in. If you guys are tuning in for the first time to the podcast and you don't know Mike Sargent, how dare you? The audacity. Mike is a film and culture critic. You can hear him on WBAI radio. You can also see him on TV. He's on Fox Business News with Maria Bartiromo. You can also see him on the PBS NewsHour for those very special moments about film and culture. How you doing, Mike?
I'm all right, hanging in there. A little disappointed that we're starting off this summer the way we are with movies.
Oh, are you talking about Men in Black, the one we just saw? Is that what you're referring to?
I could be talking about Men in Black. I could be talking about Dark Phoenix. I could be talking about, unfortunately, I could talk about Hellboy. I could be talking about at least 3 or 4 reboot sequels that have been totally underwhelming so far this year.
Well, we'll definitely talk about the maybe fatigue of sequels and reboots that we've been watching and nothing really creative or original. But we'll get to that in a second. But let's talk about Men in Black International. Mike, I ask you, did you like the film?
Well, let me give it a little bit of context here. First of all, the first 3 Men in Black films, and Men in Black is a series that's based on a comic book series by Lowell Cunningham. And, this comic book series, it's interesting that you mentioned Ghostbusters. A lot of comic books and video games are inspired by films. And in turn, then, when they make films out of something that was inspired by a film, it's sort of a bastardization of a bastardization of a bastardization. So, there's always that feel. Men in Black was really not, like you said, it was not a super original idea, but it blended certain things together into a nice, idea. There's a secret organization. It's not just 3 Ghostbusters or 4 Ghostbusters. It's a whole organization that fights not ghosts, but extraterrestrials that are here to get us. So it was fun. Part of the fun of the movies was, this is what I want to identify. What were the fun? Let me ask you, what was fun about the first 3 Men in Black films for you?
For me, it was a sense that I was watching something like the Ghostbusters, and it was like a template of something that I enjoyed. Again, I think you and I had talked about these recognizable formulas that aren't necessarily the exact image of your favorite films, but when they come in a form where the DNA is kind of like played with, but it still holds some of the essence. Those are some of the things that I remember about the original Men in Black from 1997. Also, let's be honest, Will Smith kind of made that movie single-handedly.
Not just Will Smith, but specifically the chemistry between the stoic, by the book Tommy Lee Jones character.
Oh, hold on a second, man. Hello. Are you fucking kidding me, man? Telemarketers, sorry about that. Go ahead.
Well, you should keep that in. We could do a whole show on that. Anyway,
robocalls.
Exactly. But so it was, Tommy Lee Jones' stoic performance as what was he, Agent whatever he was, and Will Smith being the seat of your hands, always joking. It was the combination of the salt and the pepper and salt, the oil and vinegar.
Yeah, it was
Oil
the
and
odd
water.
couple.
It
Dun,
was
dun,
the odd
dun, dun,
couple.
dun, dun,
Exactly.
dun. And that's what we have here in the new one with Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson. I know they've been in Thor and in the Avengers, but this is an odd couple. He's massively huge. He looks like a Norwegian god, and she looks like a New Yorker. Both coming in together, and it just doesn't seem like they would be friends in real life or date in real life. And there's these romantic overtones between them too, and I don't see it. I don't see how those two are perfectly matched to make movies together and to bring box office attention to it. And I think that by the Thursday and Friday box office numbers, you're starting to notice it.
Well, I think that you said something key here. You don't quite buy the romance. You don't quite buy the humor. You don't quite buy the chemistry. You don't quite buy the creatures. You don't quite buy the premise. You don't quite buy the threat. Everything about it is sort of flat.
Yes.
It's amusing, but it never takes off. B, it just never quite comes together. The strongest scenes in the whole film, and as a matter of fact, they felt like they were written by somebody else. So I don't know how much ad lib was done, but when Najil, I know I'm pronouncing his name wrong, but when the little character he plays, Pawnee, when the three of them are interacting, Tessa Thompson, Chris Hemsworth, and Najil Kujani are interacting. It's great. It's funny. The dialogue, it moves. What they're saying, you're learning about the characters. You're learning what they think of each other. It's so much better than everything else in the film that you're like, wow. You'd much rather just see the three of them sitting around having a conversation than you would seeing this whole film.
So here's something interesting about that, and I'm going to add to what you're saying. The name of the writers is Art Markram and Matt Holloway. And
right, who are credited as being one of the 8 writers for Iron Man.
That's right. And they also helped to launch the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So these guys know how to create an excellent action-adventure sci-fi film. This is sort of like their bread and butter. And the fact that these two guys, it's not one guy, it's two of them. And the fact that they couldn't nail this down really tells you the challenges that doing a reboot or a reimagination of something that we've already seen done better, and the challenges of what that sort of like just holds. For me, this was a boring film. This was a movie that on paper was box office hit, but that when it was executed, that's when you start having to like really understand and deconstruct the film to kind of find exactly what it was. It wasn't Chris Hemsworth's charm. It wasn't Tessa Thompson's seductiveness. There were just so many things here that weren't special.
So many things wrong with this film. I mean, and I'm glad you mentioned, I just got to build on a couple of things. Let's just talk about the Chris Hemsworth character. First of all, he plays this character that you hear. He's this great character. He's a great character. You see nothing about him that makes him this great agent. He's supposed to be a great agent. He's just an arrogant fool, okay, who seems to be getting by on luck. Now, that would be okay if this was the first time we saw an arrogant fool who's getting by on luck, who's really good looking. We've seen that character a million times.
A million times.
Played much better by actors with a lot more, and this is where I'm going here, screen presence than Chris Hemsworth. Now, Tessa Thompson, her character, in my opinion, I thought that was a really interesting storyline that, I'm not giving away much.
She had a better storyline than Chris.
She definitely, not only did she have a storyline, but she actually had a character arc, but not much of one. Because the character arc actually happens before she, like by the end of the first act, or within that first half of the first act, we see her as a child, we see her grow up, we see she wants to be one of the Men in Black, and like when she finally does, that's her, she fulfilling her dream. After that, it's just they talk about things happening, they talk about how they feel, and talking about chemistry, Tessa Thompson and Chris Hemsworth, first of all, in real life, they're the exact same age, okay? Both born in 1983, okay? They don't seem that way. Tessa Thompson seems like 10 years younger. And there's a scene in the movie where she kind of is eyeing Chris Hemsworth, and you kind of feel like their relationship might be inappropriate. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Did it hit you that way? It's like, they said she is, but she comes across so young and sort of, if she's supposed to be, in her 30s, she definitely doesn't come across as that kind of character in this film. And he comes across as somebody who's just past 35, who's been living a little too hard, and he's still got his looks, but you can see he's starting to ruin them.
Let me tell you exactly what I thought the problem with this film was. They were trying to recreate the chemistry between Will and Tommy Lee Jones, but with Chris and Tessa. And it was basically the same kind of characters redone. And to me, one of the most curious and the sort of like the characters that I thought that were the most interesting, that I wanted to know more about their story and their arc, was Emma Thompson and Liam Neeson. Those two together would have been a lot more interesting than what I saw with Chris and Tessa.
And they never had one scene together, did they?
No, not one.
Like,
one was in New York,
Emma
one was in
Thompson
London.
And Leah and Neeson in the same film, and they never have a scene together.
And they never have a scene together. And who knows what scheduling conflicts, or maybe it wasn't even in the script for them to meet. But let's really talk about it. Emma Thompson's having a bit of a renaissance.
Absolutely.
Liam Neeson's been going through some controversy.
All right. The deal, what it was, and I do think it's left most people's minds, but what it was is that he was recalling, he played in this revenge film, and he recalled a time where he had a friend who was attacked by some black people, and he went off looking for black people to hit with a kosh. And that was, he got called out for that. And you know what? I don't blame Liam Neeson. He was trying to say, we all, get caught up in stupidity. He's grown since then. This is 35 years ago. It didn't make
He had
me
to go
look at him.
defend himself on Good Morning America with Robin Roberts. I mean, that's that's a pretty big deal. That's putting the magnifying glass on you.
I agree. For me though, none of that affected my view of Liam Neeson. It's like, I get it. I like Liam Neeson for his work. I wish every racist white person would outgrow it. But but for me, in this film, like you said earlier, everybody's done so much better things that while you enjoy seeing them on screen, you just wish.
I just think they should have gone in a different route. Like it would have been great if, instead of trying to replicate what Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones had done in 1997 and the years subsequent to that, it would have been fantastic if we would have kind of understood a little bit more about the agency itself. Sort of almost like a prequel of sorts, as opposed to a sequel of sorts, where how did this come to be? And where did Emma Thompson and Liam Neeson, who were the original OG Men in Black?
Now, that's really would make a much better film.
Yes, this is what I'm saying.
That's a much better film. Like, we see how they got started back in the 50s or whatever.
Yeah. My God. There you go. We can write the story right now, dude.
In this, I felt what makes a good sequel, or what makes a good universe, is one when you expand on the universe or you expand on the characters. This, by going to another country, that didn't expand the universe. I don't even understand the rules. There's so many things that happen in this movie that don't make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, after a while, you just throw your hands up and you're saying, okay, it's not going to make sense.
No, and it looks like they were just creating MacGuffins, which are artificial devices, in order to propel a story forward, that sometimes really are incoherent. And when you try to compare these films to maybe other films that are out there that are action inspired, like, for example, the John Wick trilogy, that's when you start really understanding how this movie just doesn't have the legs to create a sequel based on Chris and Tessa. There was nothing here for you to sink your teeth in and leave the theater reveling in something special. There was nothing special here. And I still don't know if this is F. Gary Gray's fault. I don't know if he couldn't execute on the writing. I don't know if the writing wasn't good enough to be able to give F. Gary Gray. I don't know if the performances were solid enough to rise above it. I just feel like Chris needs to be careful, because he's becoming very one-dimensional with his funny, sarcastic, self-deprecating, good-looking guy character. We saw it in the female Ghostbusters.
I 100% agree.
But the last great movie that I saw Hemsworth do was Rush.
And I didn't think that movie was great. I thought it was okay, and I'm not a
He nailed that character down, man. I was very impressed with him because I thought he actually showed some real good acting chops in there.
Well, I think he's a decent actor. I think he is funny, and I think that can be a secret weapon. But I think you're right, and I think he needs to take a page from Brad Pitt. I think he'd be better off doing more character roles and less leading man parts. I think he'd be better off doing some more ensembles and showing some things that he really can act.
See, I would disagree with you. I think he's a leading man. I think a guy that looks that good looking, because I was walking by, he actually came out on the red carpet, and I saw him. I took a video of him, and I'm just thinking, this dude's our era's Brad Pitt. And
I agree. I agree with you.
And for me, the guy does have acting chops, except he's just coasting right now, dude. He's on a high of the Avengers. He's on a high of the Thor movies. This guy right now feels like he can't do anything wrong. He's married to an incredibly beautiful Spaniard woman by the name of Elena Anaya. I believe they just had a baby. He's a father. He just created a new fitness app called Center. It's amazing. This dude is so like floating above, the ground, that I don't think he really cares to challenge himself to evolve as an actor, to get to the places where a Brad Pitt has got into, where Leonardo DiCaprio has got into, because I don't think he feels like he needs to.
This is my take. I think he's a decent actor, and I do think he's funny, but I don't know that he can really carry a film.
Well, what do you think Thor is?
Well, I think Thor, he had a lot surrounding him to make Thor work. And it's sort of like Christopher Reeve. Christopher Reeve really never had another hit besides Superman. Jude Law is another actor who I think is a great actor, but he can't really carry a film.
He did Alfie, and Alfie ended up being a bit of a flop.
The last thing I'll say on Hemsworth, I do hope he does a good job with the Hulk Hogan film. I think it's an interesting casting choice, so I'm curious to see what happens.
Wait, so is that official? Because I heard that as a rumor.
As far as I know, that's pretty official.
Is that filming soon?
I don't know if it's filming soon, but I know it's in development. It's Todd Phillips. What?
I don't know if I get it. Big, blonde. He could probably grow the mustache. It's the personality. I'm a Hulk Hogan fanatic.
All right.
I'm letting you know right now that there's things that maybe he can do, but hey, let me tell you something, bro. I don't know if he can bring that Hulkamaniac out of him. He's going to have to bring something, the DNA and the essence of Hogan, of Terry Bollea, which is his real name, to the screen. And I don't think anybody can do Hogan except Hogan. That might actually be a mistake.
Well, to me, what I hear you saying is, if he can pull that off, he will prove himself.
Yeah, absolutely. If he can do it, because that one is a challenge, because you're playing a guy that's currently still an icon in America. He is actually, outside of the racial things that he went through recently, outside of that, Hogan on screen has been an icon for 30 years, my man. And to play someone like that's, and if you flop, oh man, I think his stock will take a cut, because.
Well, you might be right. Maybe he, because his next film is Jay and Silent Bob reboot. So I'm sure he had fun doing that.
I don't think there's any reason for that dude to make anything challenging at all. I think when the money starts running out and the scripts start running out, you're finally going to see him do a Matthew McConaughey and head out into the indie market and start creating some really interesting roles.
Well, just coming back to Men in Black for a second, I have to say, you probably know this, and people who may not follow film like we do may not know that originally this new Men in Black was going to be a crossover film between 21 Jump Street and Men in Black.
Jump Street.
So, with Channing Tatum and Jonah Hill reprising their roles, to me, that would have been a fun movie. Watching some characters we already like enter this world or find out, peel back that layer they're aliens and stuff. That probably would have been a fun movie, in my opinion.
Do you think alien movies in the context of comedy still have weight and a draw in today's era?
Well, it's interesting. I was just reading an article about Star Trek, and the Quentin Tarantino. Quentin Tarantino wants to make a Star Trek movie, and he wants it to be R-rated. And someone was writing about it. Was actually, I read this in like Popular Mechanics, and they were saying how Star Trek doesn't need an R-rated. Star Trek doesn't need an R rating. It's the last thing Star Trek needs. But one of the things they pointed out is how most movies that deal with aliens are kind of like this, where the aliens are coming to take over to destroy us. There are very few movies where the aliens, like Close Encounters or E.T.,
Hmm.
where the aliens are actually benevolent, and that's a rarer thing. It's much more of a Hollywood thing to do it, and I think you're right. I think how many alien invasion TV series and post alien invasion TV series and aliens are coming movies and Fourth of July or Independence Day. It's like after a while, yeah, aliens being here, either we're going to have a lot of fun with it, which this should have been, or you got to do something new.
Right.
I thought the aliens, they have lots of little cameos from kind of half-baked looking alien creatures that are like, nothing really. I mean, we've seen, like you said, you've seen so much. CGI can do anything.
I know.
I miss seeing the Rick Baker creatures, and they were prosthetic.
I remember that the last invasion movie that really kind of like freaked the heck out of me was M. Night Shyamalan's Signs with Mel Gibson.
I liked Signs. I liked Signs a lot.
That was a movie that built up to the scene where the alien appears. And
Yeah.
I still remember that moment where I think it was the little girl or even Mel Gibson himself was inside the house and they heard the alien outside of the house. And then you kind of just saw a sliver of him pass through the door. And that was enough to freak out the whole audience. Like to the point that a lot of them wanted to kind of like just walk out of the theater. They were so freaked out. And I think that today in 2019, that's kind of like what we're asking for. Give us some sort of realism that these aliens kind of exist. The New York Times recently had an article about these two jet fighters that finally confessed about UFOs they had actually seen.
Sure.
And there was even videos of it. So if you don't believe in UFOs at this moment, I don't know, man, but I think you can bring some of that real life headlines and kind of zoom in. Like, was it what these jet fighters saw? Was it real? Let's explore it.
I'm glad you said that because you brought up two really good points here, in my opinion. One, that, if we're going to have a movie, okay, and this is one of the big flaws of the film, they keep talking about the alien threat here is the hive, the hive, the hive, the hive, they're coming, the hive, they're evil, the hive, they're bad, the bad, bad hive. It's like, okay, you never see, you don't really know what the hive can do. You never really see the hive.
There was never a threat. There was never any fear.
You never really understand the hive. I don't understand the hive. And so that was like this vague threat that's out there. Okay. So if you're going to have a comedy, sci-fi comedy, you got to make the sci-fi, the scary, the alien part, like you said, you got to make it believable, or do like what I think one of the films to best weave reality and fantasy together was X-Men: Days in Future Past.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
That was an amazing film.
It was amazing because it tied together things that it makes you like, heh, and it's a wink and a nod to say, yeah, you didn't realize it, but right behind Kennedy was an alien. All these things that were fun, and that's what now coming with your concept of like, how did the Liam Neeson and the Emma Thompson character, become the heads of, the Men in Black.
That's what they should have done. This should have been an origin and Men in Black film as a prequel, setting up the Will Smith.
Setting up the universe.
Right.
So we understand it.
I wanted to ask you about F. Gary Gray and where you see him as a director today after seeing Men in Black International.
F. Gary Gray is a director who clearly can do comedy, clearly can do action. He, doing Friday and stuff like that, and then doing The Negotiator, which was a lot of fun.
With Sam Jackson.
So he knows how to do both. But I think it comes down to script. I think this was a flat script. I think he did what he could, but I think it there's a lot of money being spent here. When you watch the film, there's a lot of locations. I mean, the for all the locations they go to, just the budget for the crew, hotel, and flight alone could have made 3 independent films that were really good. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think F. Gary Gray. I think he'll be okay from this. I'm glad to see him working. I think he's a talented director, but I think he was a little out of his element here.
I think to kind of wrap up here, Men in Black International is a film that you probably don't want to pay money for because you might end up being disappointed. Now, if you love Chris and you don't care if that dude is on his head gargling water and you'd see that as a performance for 2 hours and you love that, then you're a fanatic that you should go see that film. But if you're a moviegoer and you're going with your family and you want to get a bang for your buck, I don't think that this is the movie to see. I think there's many better movies out there, and there's many better movies that are going to be coming out throughout the year that you could probably save your money on and maybe catch this one on TV or DVD.
All right, well, and let me add to that to say that, Men in Black was a comic book series for a long time. They had a cartoon series, so this universe should be pretty well established. It's a shame that they didn't do more with the resources that they had at hand. So if you're a Men in Black fan, because the first one was great, the second one was a little off, the third one was back on track, but again, it did what you said, where it gave us the background of the character, and we jump back in time, and that made it fun. It helped us understand today.
Context is everything in these films, and they rarely used it to help the audience out. Mike, thank you so much. You can catch Mike Sargent on WBAI Radio. You can catch him on Fox Business News, and you can also catch him on PBS NewsHour. Mike, thanks a lot, man.
Yes, thank you.